We know sports.
10-5 touchdown!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ, HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on Tuesday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Hanging out with you live in the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Glad to have you guys on board the show today. Coming up, we'll be talking Eagles, Sixers, also Flyers back in action tonight. We'll talk about the Flyers as well tonight here on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin Durso, our Flyers Insider, will join me coming up at 6:40 p.m. We'll get into the little stuff with Eagles as the Giants lost last night. We talk about that loss. That loss, listen, we expected the Giants to lose. The losing is not the issue. The issue is how they lost. That was the disturbing thing. So we'll get to all of that as well. Of course, you can chime into the shows. We are live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. Text in 609-403-0973. And of course, you can DM the show through the 973 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. And now that we are in a situation where the Eagles have a chance to reach the postseason, and it's also the week where we celebrate Thanksgiving. In my opinion, the best holiday ever. I'll get to that a little more tomorrow's show. But to me, the Eagles being in a position to be in a playoff hunt is something we should all be thankful for. Because number one, last year was ugly football. It was one of the most ugly years that I can remember watching the Eagles. I mean, it was even more ugly than the Dream Team, because the Dream Team at least had some like comic relief about how ridiculously bad that season went. I mean, this was like the first year of Andy Reid bad, where it was just like week in and week out, you just dreaded turning on the TV to watch the game. That's what last year felt like for me, for the Eagles. And this year is completely different. So the fact that we've already passed the win total from last year is a big deal to me. And now this team is in a position to go into the postseason. Now, part of it is because there's a lot of parity in the NFL. There's a lot of teams that are all just around the same team. They're all average. They're all mediocre. They're all kind of about the same. And I get that. I understand that that kind of takes some of the juice out of it. But with a team that was supposed to be in transition, an organization that's supposed to be rebuilding, you are in a position right here, right now, to not just turn things around. You're in a position to find out what your players are really made of. You know, the postseason is the great equalizer. The postseason is an opportunity for you to learn what your guys are really made of. What kind of metal do they have? You know, is it steel? Is it aluminum? I mean, literal metal. Like, you know, will they bend but not break? You know, I'm not saying they got to be vibranium, but I mean, you know, you want your metal to be at least tough enough to take some hits and be able to walk out the other side successful. I want to know what the Eagles team looks like down the stretch. And now we have an opportunity, because they are winning games, to learn who and what this team really is. Listen, if Jalen Hurts is going to be the quarterback moving forward, we need to find out who he is moving forward. If you have to make changes this offseason, as we all expect them to, You have to do it in a way that is going to benefit not just the organization next year, but for years to come. When the Eagles went into this year's draft, traded up, traded down, traded up again, got Devonta Smith, drafted Landon Dickerson, drafted Milton Williams. And now all those players have contributed to varying degrees. Obviously, Devonta Smith looks like the number one receiver the Eagles have not had in a long time. He's at minimum the best receiver you've had since Jeremy Maclin. And, if you want to go bigger picture, he's the best wide receiver one you've had since Terrell Owens. I mean, realistically, no offense to Deshaun Jackson, but he was never really a wide receiver one. He was never a go-to receiver. He was a guy who made big plays for you, got big yards after the catch, was a threat over the top on the defense. You drafted Landon Dickerson. He looks like he's your left guard of the future. Him and Mailata look like a force of nature that cannot be stopped. So the Eagles in the draft started building not just for this year and next year, but for the future. And then look at all the guys they're extending. Dallas Goedert, Avonte Maddox, TJ Edwards. They're giving guys contract extensions because they don't want to end up in a bidding war with them in free agency. You may or may not remember that a few years ago, Austin Hooper hit the free agent market. And the Falcons made the wrong assumption that this guy was not going to be, get into some crazy situation where a bidding war. They were completely wrong. He chose Cleveland and he left Atlanta high and dry. You don't want to end up in a situation. You don't want to be that team. And that's why you do these contract extensions. You don't want to end up, losing a guy like, for example, I know that Jordan Hicks and Camus Grugier-Hill were not guys who were superstars, but they were guys who, let's be realistic, last year's team, they would have been a huge upgrade over some of the guys on the field like Nate Gary. What a disaster that project was. Man. So here we are. We're in a new era of Eagles football as they're trying to make a transition. And I want to know, what does this team have when push comes to shove? Who are they deep down inside? When December rolls down the hill, when we start getting into the Washington matchup and the matchup again with the Cowboys and the second matchup with the Giants. The first matchup, I think, is going to be the Eagles just punching them to death and them just kind of just expiring at the end. Because when you fire your offensive coordinator on a short week with a division rival, I don't believe Freddie Kitchens is going to come in there and revolutionize this offense. Freddie Kitchens may stabilize the offense a little bit, but I don't think the Giants showed us anything last night that makes the Eagles sweat at night, keep them awake, nothing. The Buccaneers showed that the Giants' defense is an opportunistic defense. It is not a defense that is going to be able to limit teams week in and week out. Now, listen, part of that's because they're going against Tom Brady. But part of it is also because Logan Ryan did not play last night. And when he didn't play, that exposed them. And I was thinking last night, look, I expected the Bucs to win the game, but I expected the Buccaneers to have a little bit of trouble on the perimeter. Instead, the opposite happened. The Giants basically got manipulated by Brady all night. And now the Giants defense has to go from a team that is a pass first, run second offense that destroyed them on both fronts to now going against an Eagles team that runs first and passes second, which is not really that much better for the Giants. Because when you really look at the Giants season, now aside from the situation with them firing Jason Garrett, okay, Because obviously that in and of itself is kind of like, whoa. Obviously, Joe Judge is trying to save his job. But look at the teams that have been able to rush against the Giants defense. The Cowboys had 201 yards. The Saints with Alvin Kamara had 170 yards. The Broncos had 165 yards. The Rams had 131 rushing yards. The Raiders had 117, and they beat the Raiders, by the way. The Chiefs had 107 yards. Think about that for a minute. That's not one or two games where the Giants defense got gashed by the run game. That's 6. 6 out of 10 games. And by the way, there's one game with 94 yards. That was last night. So you can run on the Giants defense. And part of the reason why you can run the Giants defense is a point that we talked about last night here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. It's a point that I brought up to Mike Gill on the Sports Bash today as well. Teams are not built to stop run games. They're not built to be able to handle the manipulation that comes from going run, pass, run, pass, run. They can't handle it because most teams don't have the defensive talent necessary to handle it. It's not just not having the big boys up the middle like your Jeremiah Trotters and your Ray Lewises. It's not just not having guys like a Bart Scott out there running downhill. It's also because you don't have the players with the football IQ to handle these things. Let's be realistic. Outside of Logan Ryan, who on the Giants defense do you look at and you're like, hey, that guy's really good? Leonard Williams. But he's not a linebacker. He's not a safety. He's not a corner. Adoree Jackson can get manipulated by anyone. Xavier McKinney, he's 22. He's still raw and learning the speed of the NFL game. I didn't realize while watching the game last night. Did you know that Reggie Ragland is still in the league? I completely forgot about him, honestly. Ragland's still hanging around, guys. How about them apples? He was a bust. A lot of people thought he was a bust of a draft pick. You know, when the Bills dumped him on the Chiefs years ago. And he's still hanging around the league. You know, good for him, man. Wow. How wild is that? Realistically, the best defensive players for the Giants are all on the D-line. And the Eagles have arguably one of the 3 best offensive lines in the NFL. And obviously having good talent on the defensive line hasn't helped the Giants stop run games. As I said, you're talking about 6 of their 10 games over 100 rushing yards against them. So the Eagles can beat up on the Giants. I'm not worried about that this Sunday. What I am worried about is when the calendar turns to December, what is this team made of? What is this coaching staff made of? I want to know that as well. I want to know, how does Nick Sirianni handle a playoff run? How does Jonathan Gannon adjust to a playoff run? The Giants and Jet games are winnable games. Then you get your bye week. How does Sirianni come out of a bye week? Listen, we had in 20 years in Philadelphia, if you're an Eagles fan, you saw it every year. Andy Reid and Doug Peterson typically gave you one of their best games of the year coming out of the bye week. Now, you got to turn the table and say, what does Sirianni do coming out of the bye week? There's a lot of questions about this team, a lot of questions about this coaching staff still to be answered. And I'm going to find out because the Eagles are in a playoff hunt. You find out in a hot kitchen who can handle the heat. Anyone who's worked in different environments, okay? For example, if you've ever worked in a restaurant, certain people just, they can't handle the busyness. They can't handle the chaos. It's not the literal heat of the kitchen that worries you. It's Can they handle the pressure when the restaurant gets busy? That's the heat that you want to know if they can handle. When I was a lifeguard at the water park years ago, when I was much younger, the idea is some people tested well for the lifeguard exam, but when push came to shove and they had to jump in and save someone, they couldn't do it. All right? And people had to pick up where people left off. And those people who couldn't do the job would either leave the job or get fired halfway through the summer because they couldn't handle when the pressure came on. Anybody can look good in practice. Anybody can look good in certain situations that benefit you. But when the heat is turned up, when the pressure is even more, when the temperature outside goes down, what is Sirianni and Gannon and Devonta Smith and TJ Edwards and Dallas Goedert, what are these guys made of? We are going to find out. I think I know what they're made of, but we're going to be proven on the field in December. And that is a litmus test that this organization needs, because this organization needs clarity. You fired the Super Bowl winning head coach less than a year ago. You traded away the man that you traded up not once, but twice in the 2016 draft to get in Carson Wentz. There was tons of friction between the owner in the front office and the previous coaching staff. Now, the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, and his front office, led by Howie Roseman, got the coach that they wanted. And now they have the quarterback that they drafted because they remember missing out on Russell Wilson almost a decade ago. The organization has what they wanted. Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman made their bed. Now we're going to find out, can that bed stand up to the kids jumping up and down on it and everything else that goes with it? Because you know what? If that bed falls apart, everyone should point their finger right at Jeffrey Lurie, because this is what Lurie wanted. If this is a success, the owner deserves credit. If it's not a success, the owner deserves the largest pile of blame. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Of course, Game Night being brought to you, my friends, over at the FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. It's time to experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get in on all the games you love at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel and Casino off the boardwalk in Atlantic City. Get your game face on and score big every day, not just the weekend. But you know what? Maybe it's Black Friday. Maybe you want to go do a little shopping in Atlantic City, and you're like, I need a break. I can't handle any more of this shopping. I gotta go decompress. You're already in the city. Why not head over to Bally's Hotel and Casino? Go check out the FanDuel Sportsbook. Get in on some of the action. I'll be on the air Friday. I'll give you some ideas. I'll give you some picks. Maybe you go in there, make yourself a little money. You have opportunity with FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Hotel and Casino off the boardwalk in Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let me know what you guys think on the text board at 609-403-0973. We are live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. And of course, you can chime in the show through 973 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night on 973 ESPN.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. It's week 12 of the 2021 season with the Eagles in North Jersey against the Giants.
Back goes Jones again. He steps up. He's hit. The ball is fumbled. Eagles have it. Eagles have it.
Pre-game begins this Sunday at noon. Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 1. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
It's game time. Football season is in full swing, and you can catch all the NFL action at the FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. It's time to get in on all the games you love. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's off the boardwalk, Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig hanging out with you here in the Matt Black Kia studios here on 97.3 ESPN. With your thoughts and comments, just a bit. Text board is open at 609-403-0973. We're also live on YouTube at 973 ESPN. And of course, you can join the conversation through the 973 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Before I get back to the Eagles stuff, I do want to remind everyone that Joel Embiid, we have the full report at 973ESPN.com and on the 973 ESPN mobile app. Joel Embiid is on track to return soon. According to multiple reports, he is ramping up his play. And I said this on the article, and I'll expand on it here just a little bit. I'm not happy. I'll preface this by saying I'm not happy when anyone gets sick. All right. But I think that Joel Embiid being out with a COVID situation might be a blessing in disguise. Remember, it was at the end of October, the Ramona Shelburne report came out, and we wrote about it at 973ESPN.com. We talked about it here on Game Night that Joel Embiid was trying to play through a sore knee. They had to sit him out one game because apparently he had told Ramona Shelburne that he had trouble walking after the Pelicans game. There was no structural damage, but the soreness was so intense. He needed a lot of rehab and a lot of work to get going every game. So you have to think that a guy who had to be forced to rest for about 2 weeks, who is now just ramping up, this might be the best thing that could have happened to him. It forced him to rest. And now he's going to ramp up his minutes. He's going to reset the clock. It's going to probably take him about 2 weeks again, whether he starts Saturday or Monday, to get back up and going. That knee had time to rest while he was forced to do a lot of nothing. And I think that's where the blessing in disguise is for this team. I don't think it's a coincidence that when Joel Embiid comes back, you are going to see potentially the best version of him in a few weeks. You're going to see MVP Embiid because his knee will be rested. His body will be slowly rebuilt cardio-wise. And when we get to near Christmas time and beyond, we could see MVP level Joel Embiid again. And it's early enough in the year that he can still win the MVP this year. I thought it was a joke and a coward's move by the writers last year who all gave the award to Jokic, basically because Jokic didn't have COVID last year. He didn't have to miss any games. Joel Embiid had to miss games due to COVID protocols last year. And he's missed games again because of a COVID test this year. And I'm hoping that the people who vote for him don't hold that against him like they did last year. That was a cheap move by them. I thought it was cowardice to not give him all the votes for NBA first team because they try to manipulate the rules to get people like Anthony Davis in there instead. It was such a mess last year. But I think this all could be a blessing in disguise for the 76ers. Let's hear what you guys have to say over on the text board at 609-403-0973. By the way, I mentioned when I was lifeguard at the water park, somebody texted in. They didn't leave their name, but they said, Josh, did you work at Gillian's Water Park? I worked there in like 07, 08. Yes, that is the water park I was talking about. Yeah, I worked. I mean, it's not called Gillian's anymore, but I worked there the summers of 2004 and 2005. So I missed you, Texter, by a few years. I had a couple of nicknames. One of them we can't say on the radio, but the other one was I was jokingly called Super Guard because there was a bunch of times that other lifeguards were unwilling to do their job, and I was the one always covering shifts, always working the full 9 hours, 5 of the 6 days a week. I had 1 day off every week, and I had 1 day I had to work a full double shift. And there were a couple times, let's just say the names of the lifeguards will remain anonymous. I won't even say their gender because I don't want to give anybody an idea of who they might be. I don't want to embarrass anybody on the radio, but there were a couple lifeguards where kids had to be helped out of the pool. There was actually a situation where I had to go and grab 4 kids at once because the other lifeguard froze. They couldn't handle it. And the bosses had to take that lifeguard off of that rotation because they couldn't handle the pressure of that moment. So that's what I mean. When push comes to shove and when everything goes bad, you find out who the people who can handle it and the people who can't handle it. And that was a job where I saw firsthand what happens when people can't handle pressure. It was it was a little disturbing, to be honest. All right. It was a little disturbing. So see, Jeff in Summers Point. Yeah. Jeff, appreciate you jumping in. Yeah. Jeff says, I had like 3 saves my entire time. He said it was a fun job. Yeah, some of the things that happened at that job were very interesting. It was very fun. I don't know if I still have the record, but supposedly I set a record at one point for saves in the summer. I don't know if that's true or not. They just told me that. I think they might have just been buttering me up, honestly. My immediate bosses that summer. Oh, you had the most saves this year. Here's a little award. It's like, thanks. You congratulate me for doing my job. Great. That's the world we live in. Dan EHT wants to know, are the Eagles contenders or pretenders? The Eagles are contenders to make the postseason. They are not contenders to win the Super Bowl. The problem with the NFL this year is that you could make an argument for half the teams to reach the Super Bowl in some capacity or another. With the AFC, your top teams right now are the Titans, the Ravens, the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Chargers, and the Bills. Those are your current 7 in. You can make an argument for any one of those 7 teams. Yes, even the Bengals. In the NFC, your top 7 right now are the Cardinals, Packers, Bucks, Cowboys, Rams, Vikings, Saints. The Eagles are 9th. They're half a game behind that 7 spot. I can make an argument for every team in the playoff hunt right now except for the Saints. I think the Saints are going to wilter down the stretch and they're going to fall apart. They are going to wilt like a plant that hasn't seen sun in 6 months. All right. I think that the Eagles expose them. I think that they are going to struggle the rest of the year and that they're going to be forced to play Taysom Hill way more than they want to. Way more than they want to. All right, let's get to, before we get to Kevin Durso and our Flyers preview, Flyers versus Tampa tonight. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN. We have a lot to ask Kevin Durso about because a couple of former Flyers are throwing the Flyers organization under the bus. And we'll get from Kevin Durso exactly how real what those guys said. Is also going to update from him about Kevin Hayes and Ryan Ellis because it's so obvious to me that the Flyers are struggling without them. But first, NBA on TNT is tonight, and you can turn every Tuesday into a payday with TNT Tuesdays on FanDuel Sportsbook. It doesn't matter if you win or lose. FanDuel is giving all customers $10 back every Tuesday. Just bet $10 or more on a same-game parlay on any NBA on TNT game. Of course, same-game parlays are a perfect way to turn a small bet into a big-time score. So lock in your same-game parlay each Tuesday and get $10 back, win or lose, with TNT Tuesdays. Now, if you're new to FanDuel Sportsbook, just sign up right now with promo code Hennig. You get your first bet risk-free up to $1,000. That's promo code Hennig to make every moment more this NBA season exclusively on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Must be 21 or to play and present in New Jersey. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable site credit expires in 7 days. Max bonus $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now, one of the games on the NBA on TNT slate tonight is this Lakers-Knicks game. And as you know, if you've been following the news, no LeBron tonight. Now, Anthony Davis is dealing with some sort of low-grade fever, they're calling it. Also, no Derrick Rose, no Taj Gibson. So both teams are shorthanded. This is going to be a weird game tonight. So, because of all of that, here's my recommendation for the same game parlay. No LeBron means more Russell Westbrook. And whether Anthony Davis plays or not, no Taj Gibson and Anthony Davis not at his best means Julius Randle is getting points tonight. So my same game parlay goes like this. Give me Julius Randle over the 22 points. Give me the Russell Westbrook over the 19 points. Give me Carmelo Anthony back at the Garden over 15 points. That same game parlay. Remember, TNT Tuesdays, you bet at least $10. If you win, you're going to walk away with $61. If you lose, you still get $10 with FanDuel Sportsbook. That's promo code Hennig if you're new signing up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Flyers, what is going on with this organization? Do they have a problem? Well, that's Kevin Durso next, right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City, and we are live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN.
It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey tonight on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app with Tim Saunders and Steve Coates calling all the play-by-play action.
The Flyers are in Tampa to face the Lightning.
Coverage begins at 7 p.m. It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey on the radio home of the Flyers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN, and listen live on the free mobile app.
With GMF approval excludes Corvette.
Before you sell or trade your vehicle, you should go to Bennett Chevy and get the most for your trade. This month, Bennett Chevy starts the bidding on trades at $7,000. Yes, Bennett will give you a minimum $7,000 for any old clunker you can push, pull, or tow towards any pre-owned vehicle in stock. And remember, we'll buy yours even if you don't buy ours. And if we start at $7,000 for junk, how much more do you think we'll pay for a good running vehicle? Grab your title or payment book and get the absolute most for your trade today. Want a brand new vehicle? While others are charging a fortune for new vehicles, Bennett still rejects any opportunity to charge 1 penny over MSRP. Stuck in a lease? Bennett can get you out early, all makes and models. So come see what your vehicle's worth today at Bennett, where there's absolutely no obligation and no pressure, because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid based on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Tonight, Flyers hockey taking on the Lightning in Tampa. Flyers playing Tampa, I feel like it's like yesterday. I know it's not literally yesterday, but it feels like they just played them yesterday. Here are the action. Steve Coach Tim Saunders on the call tonight at 7 p.m. here on 97.3 ESPN. Before we get to those guys, Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider over at 97.3 ESPN.com, at Kevin_Durso on Twitter is where you can follow him. Check out all of his coverage of the Flyers and the NHL. Kevin, how you doing today?
Doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. I don't know if the Flyer fans are all happy for a variety of reasons. And I feel like we have to start with, even though I don't want to start with this, we now have two former Flyers who have both said very interesting things about the team and the organization. And I don't want to rehash everything. You know, people can go to 97.3 ESPN.com, check out what Scott Hartnell said. I know that the Chris Terrian audio is all over the internet at this point. So I kind of want to leave it, kind of open the door just for you to take this where you want to go, Kevin. And then I'll kind of roll with you. And that is, how much of what they said is legitimate and how much of that what they said was just two guys who maybe just don't like what's going on and they're just venting?
I guess I'll start with what Chris Terrian said, because I had hinted to things like that last year during the season as well. I had talked about how they were struggling to sell out 3,500 tickets, how it didn't matter what fans were in the building. There were fans in the building, even if they were fans of the opposition. That counts towards what they're looking for. It does have a, to use the word that Pete Thompson likes to use, it does have a corporate vibe to it. Absolutely. The story I can share as best I can, and certainly what you heard on that audio from Chris Terry and what you've heard from those clips, they have more information than I can attest to. Simple as that. They have different connections, more connections than I do, have been around the game and team much longer than I have. They can speak to it better than I can. But I remember going to, and Pete Thompson did refer to it when he was on the air just last hour, talking about the Eric Lindros, John LeClair Hall of Fame night. Here's the thing I remember about those nights. They used to delay the start of the game, not just for the warm-ups, but they would start the ceremony at 7 o'clock, delay warm-ups to 7:30, and puck drop was probably about 8:10, something like that. So you would have a game on a Tuesday night that started at 8:10 at night, did not close until pushing 11 o'clock at night, and everybody was okay with it because it was a major event. Not only that, but I remember during those ceremonies, the writers, and I share this as much as any other writer that's up there in the press box, we share out what gets said during those speeches, right? As much as we can. I don't remember sharing much because I couldn't even audibly hear it. Everything they said was met with such loud cheers. You couldn't even understand them in the building. You had to try to listen back, whether it was listening to the radio broadcast, whatever, to hear exactly what they were saying because they had to direct feed. So certainly a lot has changed in the years since then. That at that time, that was before Ed Snyder passed away. That was at a time when they were still honoring the history in such a way. I think it was embarrassing. I agree with everything that was said about that. It was embarrassing to have the amount of fans that you had in the building for that ceremony, and basically to promote that the game was starting when it was. Like, they didn't promote, hey, the ceremony is going to start at 6:30, be in your seats. They did very lightly, but everybody kind of figured out, the game doesn't start until 7:30, because when the puck dropped at 7:30, 7:45, when it actually was time for the game to begin, the building looked pretty full at that point, but there was nobody there at 6:30. And that's just an embarrassment for two members who are going into your Hall of Fame.
So is this a, as Terrian points it, an organizational problem, or is this also a fan base problem?
No, I think it's kind of an organizational problem where you've lost touch with who your true customer is in a way.
Okay.
The people who are paying to come see these games and who did all those years, the people who were your season ticket holders, were blue collar type workers who liked watching a team that works as hard as they do. That when you put your hard earned money forward, you were watching a team that came, lunch pail mentality and went to work. And it's kind of the game has changed. It's not the same way it used to be. And that's understandable. But there's just a disconnect between that where it doesn't seem to fit the economic stature of people like that. It's almost become a little high class. It costs a lot of money to go to an NHL game. And a lot of people just tune that out. They've got better ways to spend their money and their time on a Tuesday night than to be there for that kind of event, no matter how much they like the players or management people or whatever that are involved in such a ceremony. So I think that that's the disconnect, and it's really been something that's kind of been noticeable for a little bit. And I thought that what was said also, it was very important to distinguish that this is not a hockey operations thing. This is not Chuck Fletcher, Alain Vigneault, people like that who don't have a clue about how hockey is handled or anything like that. And I will kind of get into that side when we get to what Scott Hartnell said, I'm sure, but this was strictly an organizational, the people who are sitting in the offices that think about the business plan, who they should be targeting. They're not thinking of those people anymore. I mean, so many of the advertisements are not centered around your players. You're not marketing your players. You're marketing a mascot a lot of times. It's kind of, and that really is where it goes. And this is a disconnect. People want to root for the players. They want to feel like these are players that they can get on their backs and support. And it's hard to do that when they're not being the first thing that's pumped out there. So it's a lot of complications, and it's a lot of things where it just feels like an overall disconnect that has gone very corporate after being such a family atmosphere for so many years.
Let's get to the Hartnell thing, because while I thought what Terrian said made sense to me. Now, again, you're the Flyers insider, so I was giving you my take of it. You tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Okay.
I felt Hartnell went too far. To call the guys soft, I thought was very unfair to guys like Ristolainen and some of these other guys who are playing their butts off, right? If you want to say like these 3, 4, 5 guys are playing soft in his eyes, I understand that. But calling the whole team that, I felt that was going too far.
So I'll say it this way. I know what he meant to imply by saying what he said. I think soft was the wrong word, because they don't have a problem standing up to other teams. They don't have a problem getting physical. They don't have any issue with that. And that's a departure from what we saw last year. They didn't do anything to stand up for themselves or show any sense of chemistry.
Oscar Lindblom had to get in a fight last year.
Right. And you're not seeing that this year. That is a difference. What I will say is what he was trying to imply is absolutely true. And there's a really simple formula to beating this team right now, which is their mentality offensively, which they haven't been able to score goals. They have no offense right now whatsoever. It's completely dried up. They've scored 20 goals over 11 games now. That just doesn't win hockey games. And their method to trying to create offense right now is, for lack of a better term, and to agree with Hartnell, a little soft, because it's dump and chase and not really chasing after the play. Like you're trying to dump and chase. You're assuming you're going to have a guy go in hard, try to win a battle. And there's not enough winning of the battles, and there's not enough getting to the to the danger areas, to the areas where you want to create traffic. There's not traffic around the net. There's not high danger chances. They're getting outplayed in those areas every single night, it feels like at this point. there's a big inconsistency with this team collectively. I should say there's 3 consistencies that we can find with this team so far. Number 1, their offense is dried up and their power play is dreadful. There's no other way to put it. Number 2, they're relying really heavily on goaltending. They're only where they are because of Carter Hart and Martin Jones. And I have to lump Martin Jones in there because, yes, he has realistically come close to stealing 3 games in his own right. So they have 8 wins. 5 of them are because of Carter Hart and 3 of them are because of Martin Jones. And they've gotten some good opportunistic scoring in a very small handful of games, but mostly it's been relied upon that their goalies play well. And kind of to go along with it, the other consistency is how they're being played against, which is if you can get the puck behind them and go into the corners and have to win battles as an opponent and can actually win those battles, which has been the case a lot of the time, then you're going to create a lot of possession and you're going to create a lot of scoring chances. And eventually what's going to happen is what's happened in Martin Jones's last 2 starts specifically, which is 5-2 losses where you're giving up a lot of goals. And it doesn't look pretty on the scoreboard at the end of the night, and you feel like you got outplayed for the whole game, where reality is they were in both of those games at various points. When they played Dallas last Saturday, it's a 2-1 game, and you give up a goal 26 seconds later, and now it's not the same thing anymore. It's shades of last season. Against Boston, you had that game tied, and you're playing pretty well in that second period until you give up a goal with about 3.5 minutes left. And from there, the game fell over because as soon as they gave up the 4th one really early in the 3rd period, momentum killer, you're not coming in with the same mindset anymore. And now they know how to beat you, and they know just stop the dump and chase method. That's all there is to it. There was no carrying. There's no aggression. There's no sustained offensive pressure. Just do what you're doing and you'll find a way to win. I will say for them, you're trying to play without 2 key players. You're playing without a top pairing defenseman and a second line center, and those guys just aren't easily replaceable no matter how much you want to replace them, number 1. And number 2, you are playing pretty much every team that's in the top 25% in the league right now. Tampa Bay is in there now after kind of getting off to a little bit of a slow start. You're going to play Carolina later this week, and that'll be the second time you play them. You're playing Florida tomorrow night. That'll be the second time you play them. 2 games against Boston, who isn't even in the top quarter of the league, but is getting there also because they have so few games played and kind of have caught up to where they usually are. You're playing Washington. You're playing teams like that who have been up in that rankings the whole year so far. That's their consistency. And those are goaltenders who are also playing extremely well and make it hard to get some offense. But when they won a game 2-1 against Vancouver about a month ago after winning 5-3 against Edmonton in a back-to-back, you're going, that's impressive. They can win in any way, shape, or form that you throw at them. But now it's consistently been the lack of scoring, having to rely on that 2-1 win with your goaltender playing near perfect that just doesn't win games in the long term. So you need to not only find a solution to the 2 guys who are out, but find a solution to creating some offense and do it in a hurry, because this is the type of week that could leave you behind in the dust very quickly if you don't figure it out, because these 3 teams aren't letting up for anything. And Tampa Bay's dealing with injuries in their own right, but it's no excuse. They're going to find a way if they're that good of a team, and they certainly have so far this year, because they haven't played with Nikita Kucherov all year. They don't have Braden Point for tonight and for the next 4 to 6 weeks, and yet I'm sure that they'll come out on the other side of this in pretty good shape for the playoffs because they've got the talent across the board nonetheless. Whereas the Flyers seem to have to really be digging down deep at this point to make up for the absences of Kevin Hayes and Ryan Ellis.
Really quick, because we're running out of real estate here, because we had to talk about the other stuff at the beginning.
Yeah.
So after everything you said, how much of it is the players and how much of it is the coach? 30 seconds.
It's kind of goes hand in hand at this point. I mean, you have a lot of new players, so I'm not trying to dismiss that they still have to form some chemistry, but you're getting close to a quarter of the way through the season. Yes, you're not playing with your top lineup, but this is what you lean on the coaches for. And to the coach's point here at this point, Chuck Fletcher kind of had been given a list of what the coaches needed to be successful. So these are the players that you kind of asked for. You wanted this style, so you've got to deliver on it now. And if that means making some serious adjustments at this point to your lineup or your style, you got to start doing it and doing it tonight.
Flyers at Tampa to take on the Lightning tonight. The action is next right here on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app. At Kevin_Durso on Twitter. All of his Flyers coverage, all of his NHL coverage, also over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Kevin, I appreciate you answering all the pertinent questions. Hopefully next time we talk, it's a little more hockey and a little bit less people chirping on the outside.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, Josh.
I'm Josh Hennig. At Josh Hennig on Twitter is my Twitter handle. You can follow me there. Flyers hockey tonight. And, of course, we will be back tomorrow for the Thanksgiving Eve edition of Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. Mike Gill, the Sports Bash, live at Vagabonds at Egg Harbor Township tomorrow at 2 p.m. And I'll be back at 6 p.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN. Have a great night, everybody.